Good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Health Discourse with Sakshi and Sushant. So, hi, Sushant. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. So, today, for all the listeners, we will be addressing a very severe mental health neurological disorder. I won't say mental health because it actually impacts your motor skills. It actually impacts your completely impacts your quality of life. So, because yesterday I understand that it was World Parkinson's Day Awareness Day. So today we will be talking about Parkinson's disease. So, Sushant, for the benefit of all our listeners, I would like you to, elaborate how Parkinson's happens. I know it is not something which happens over, in one night, or it doesn't happen in a short period of time. It definitely has some early symptoms. So, we will start with what kind of symptoms one may experience, which could indicate some risk towards Parkinson's, and then we'll move to how the mechanism of Parkinson's actually works inside our body.
Let us first understand what Parkinson's is, right?
Yeah.
So we all call all these things a disease. So Parkinson's is a neurological disorder, as you rightly pointed out, right? And it is linked to the motor dysfunctions or the lack of movement or the tremors, right, which we experience. So generally, it is in simple words, there are nerve cells and neurons in our brain. So it is uh, due to inflammation, systemic inflammation, which leads to degeneration of nerve cells, right? These nerve cells also control your movement, right? So there are lots of dopamine producing neurons. And now we all know dopamine, right? We all relate dopamine with pleasure, right? But
That's
there,
like adrenaline only, if I'm not wrong.
no.
Adrenaline,
So dopamine is, there are,
because
again,
people
there.
usually confuse between adrenaline and dopamine. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, there are four things dopamine does. One is dopamine is required for regulating your memory, your movement, your pleasurable movements, and motivation, right? So we know, dopamine is again gut microbiome has a role to produce dopamine, but that's something I'll come back later, right? So this degeneration of nerve cells or the loss of dopamine producing neurons impacts your motor movement, and it leads to development of Parkinson's. And again, this is something which doesn't develop overnight, right? So you develop at least 10, 15 years before the symptoms show up, right? So that's a typical thing. And people who have Parkinson's have digestive issues, right? Uh, People have gastrointestinal disorders, have acid reflux issues, right? Uh, People who have Parkinson's have small intestine bacterial overgrowth as well, right? So again, it clearly points out, the connection between the gut microbiome and this neurological disorder, right? First thing, we're going to break it down into two parts. I think oral microbiome we have discussed in our last talk, so I will talk about oral microbiome briefly, but we'll more focus on the gut microbiome here, right? So essentially, we all know our microbes uh, produce a lot of metabolites, right? As a result of interacting with various food we eat, with food substrate the food we eat, right? So one of the essential. So let us get back into mechanics of it, right? So I want to make it very, very plain in a layman's language for everyone to understand, apart from name of some proteins which I would take, right? So there are some bacteria in your mouth where we call it sulfate-reducing bacteria, right? Which is such as D-sulfobria and a lot of these sulfate-reducing bacteria, which actually stimulates the production of H2S when we eat food which are high in sulfur, right? Or the cruciferous foods, vegetables, right? So if these microbes are active and expressing certain genes, right, they sense these foods and produce H2S, right? So the over when we gut is imbalanced, right? Overproduction of STS could lead to inflammation in the gut, right? The excess of STS could reach the gut cells, gut epithelial cells, right? what we call is enteroendocrine cell EECs. These are generally found in in your stomach and pancreas and intestine, right? And they have a role to play in production of hormones, right? So these basically, the estrus reaches these cells, right? And there is a particular protein which is expressed in these cells, what we call as alpha-synuclein, right? And again, it is there the excess of estrus in these cells. So what happens is there are certain mechanisms where the toxicity of this cell is is eliminated by oxidizing this into oxidizing this and probably getting rid of this, right? But uh, you know this is called thisulfate, I think, if it's producing a lot of H2S, right, and this toxin cannot overcome the existence of H2S, right? So we have this ASYN, the alpha-synuclein protein in this cell, and the excess H2S leads to release of cytochrome C protein and as well as triggers uh, production of reactive oxidative species, which is again into oxidative stress, right? So the combination of this could lead to misfold of alpha-synuclein and aggregation of alpha-synuclein, right? Again, the enteric neurons is something which also have a potential risk of aggregation of alpha-synuclein in the presence of high level of H2S, right? So hope I'm not getting too much technical, right? So very simple. They are.
I think it's pretty it's not that difficult to understand because we do know that sulfur, there are a lot of sulfur producing foods, like even white sugar, that is sulfur, right?
Mhm.
The crystalline form of sugar, right? I'm not talking about the
Mhm.
brown sugar
So
and all.
in simple
So
words, if your microbes are active producing H2S can go to gut cells, right, where there is this particular protein, right? The excess of H2S could lead to a release of certain cytochrome C protein and reactive oxidative species called oxidative stress. This all leads to alpha-synuclein, aggregation, right? And through cell-to-cell mechanism, this could, enter the brain through lower brain stem through you know, uh, vaginal, sorry. It can enter the lower brain stem, it can enter the brain, right? Where this alpha synuclein aggregation could activate certain immune cell called microglia, and microglia further activates. It's a positive loop, right? And this actually impacts your neuron functions. It impacts your the motor activity, and that's how this is all involved in the pathogenesis of Parkinson's disease, right? So again, it's an inflammation in the gut caused by H2S, which causes the H2S to move to different cells where this inflammatory stuff happens. Then alpha-synuclein is overexpressed. It leads to aggregation, misfold and aggregation of alpha-synuclein in the presence of reactive oxygen species, and it moves to your lower brain stem, where it impacts your neurological functions, right? So that is one aspect. Again, H2S is also present in blood, right? It mixes with hemoglobin. The free flow of H2S could actually further induce the alpha-synuclein aggregation in the brain neurons, right? So again,
Sushant, I would like to, just pause you here a little bit because for the
sure.
benefit of all our listeners, that sulfur is definitely an element which is required by our body, right? But when we talk about hydrogen sulfide, it is a poisonous toxic gas, right? Most of us might have read that in chemistry during our early science years, right? So, I mean, they should not be confusing this sulfur with H2S because sulfur is beneficial for us, right? And excess of it,
See,
it'll.
See, sulfur is required, but when you consume a lot of foods which is high in glucose in it, or sulfur, the sulfate reducing bacteria converts into sulfate, right, and sulfide, right? It combines with H2, so to produce hydrogen sulfide, right? It's a pathway which is also implicated in the onset of various, IBS diarrhea, right? So
Also, ulcerative colitis, I have heard that, sulfur.
It
high
triggers
sulfide.
diarrhea. It triggers diarrhea, right? So we all know when you consume some people who consume lot of cabbage or cauliflower or broccoli or a lot of these cruciferous vegetables, right? Could trigger diarrhea if these microbes are active, right? So again, these microbes have been implicated in now we have found this. It is also linked to onset and progression of Parkinson's. So again, having this bacteria doesn't mean it would trigger Parkinson, it will trigger S2S. It is about if they are actually really producing stress or not, right? So that is from a gut microbiome perspective, right? So again, gut microbiome has a role to play in Parkinson's. That's why we have digestive issues, right? And I'll also touch upon SIBO in the next phase, right? So then later part of the discussion. So again, that's why even people have gastrointestinal issues, have SIBO, have acid reflux, people who have Parkinson's, right? Again, it is the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, right? And again, so coming on to the oral microbiome, we discussed about this last time also that the microbes in the mouth, right? Certain microbes, mutants. So if there's a lot of inflammation going on, right? So this particular bacteria could move to your brain, could activate microglia again, could also lead to infiltration of Th1 immune cells, which again impact your neurological function. Both gut and oral microbiome have a role to play, right, in the onset and progression of Parkinson's, right? Even people who have gum disease, right, have a higher risk of Parkinson's. Again, it is linked to oral microbiome.
You've already said that it all starts with your mouth. I mean,
Yeah.
earlier we used to say the disease that begins in the gut, but it
No,
actually
no.
starts with the
So,
mouth.
so you have to understand, it's a digestive tube. So from top to the bottom of the digestive tube. The top of the
Hmm.
digestive tube is mouth, the bottom is obviously gut, right? And we have stomach and small intestine, right? But that is the problem, there's not much focus in the oral microbiome, but again, both have a role to play. It is not that only oral microbiome, but again, oral gut shares 50% of the microbiome. So obviously, you could see the inflammation in the gut by looking at your oral microbiome as well, right? So, so essentially, we discussed about the gut dysbiosis, the gut inflammation, oral microbial dysbiosis, which should allow translocation of certain microbes in the brain, right, which could activate certain, they or their metabolites could activate certain immune cells, which could further, cause is including in pathogens of Parkinson's, right? So again, there are motor movements and there are motor dysregulations, right? What a lot of us or a lot of doctors would recommend is drugs like Levodopa, right? And the point here is that our body needs dopamine, right, for the movement, right? So the dopamine production again, 50% dopamine is produced by gut microbiome, and we know that how gut microbiome can impact the dopamine production or suppress the dopamine production. We discussed through the alpha synuclein aggregation, right? Uh, which could impact the degenerative nerve cells, right? So again, that is something. There's a feedback loop we discussed about alpha-synuclein aggregation causing overactivation immune cell further activating this, and it's a positive feedback loop in the inflammatory activity inside the brain. So levodopa again is set to uh, produce dopamine, right? But again, the effectiveness of uh, levodopa to produce dopamine, it depends upon your gut microbiome, right? So if a certain bacteria is active in your gut, right, it could convert levodopa into tyrosine, and you may not have any benefit out of it, right? Or probably the bioavailability of this particular drug would be low, so you would have to take more and more and more this. So probably you would see people who have Parkinson's and levodopa is not working, so doctor would advise to increase the intake of those drugs, right, on a daily basis, right? So essentially, again, effectiveness of levodopa depends upon your gut microbiome. So if it could convert into dopamine, probably it would have an impact on improving your motor movements. Or if it can't, if it converts into tyrosine, you will not have any benefit out of it, right? And again, coming on to SIBO impact, right? So H. pylori, we all know is a pathogen. We have seen it is one of the bacteria implicated in SIBO as well, right? And again, H. pylori, we know it's a lot of people do not know it is an oral microbe, right? So H. pylori is found in stomach, and it impacts your efficiency of the effectiveness of the levodopa. And again, so that's why people who have SIBO have high risk of Parkinson's, and so that's all connected. So again, it is all linked to your microbiome, whether it is the gut microbiome or the oral microbiome. So the effective levodopa also depends upon your gut microbiome, right? So that is something important to understand.
I think that's pretty, interesting to know that even and then when you say acid reflux, and if people are taking antacids for suppressing that, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be further causing damage because
The
uh,
I've not seen. I don't know whether there's a correlation between this, but I do know that uh, PPIs and antacids do impact your production of nitric oxide, right? And it could impact your various other biological processes, right? It could elevate your blood pressure level. It could impact your increase your blood sugar levels, right? Impact sexual health, multiple things, right?
so
So.
there are multiple impacts, if you
Yeah,
are
but
taking
but
antacids.
I'm not sure. I'm not aware if there's a connection between this. Probably I have to research it if there is something.
Yeah. So, what, according to you, should be the ideal steps for somebody who has early signs? And also, I have a question: is dementia something which is a part of Parkinson's also? Because Alzheimer's, we do know
Mm.
dementia. It
So
starts in
Alzheimer's, we
infancy.
discussed about the oral microbiome. That's a different
Yes.
mechanism altogether. Probably that's
But is
probably let.
dementia somewhere one of the symptoms of Parkinson's as well? Early signs of dementia.
No, I don't. I'm not sure about it. To be very frank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we say what are the early steps a person should take if he has some tremors and some trembling in his motor activities, right? So if a person,
Fix your microbiome.
yeah, okay.
Understand whether your microbiome is producing too much of H2S, or there's a lot of oral inflammatory activities happening in the mouth, right? So one of the symptom again is the bleeding gums. So bleeding gums could allow certain bacteria to move from mouth to brain, right? So again, it all depends upon your functions and the genes expressed by your microbiome, right?
Yes, I'm pretty
So,
sure that some people would say that this is genetic in nature, and I know that this is not genetic in nature. What is
no,
your
it's
opinion
not.
on that?
No, if it's genetic in nature, why didn't it happen when you're born,
Yeah. Well, and
right?
it happens during what I've seen that even today, these days, starting from 40s, you are more vulnerable to, this thing called Parkinson's, isn't it? From the early 40s also, it actually occurs to some people.
Yeah, so again, first thing, it is not genetic. Obviously, it's a lifestyle issue, and it's because of mostly or because of dietary choices, or our bad oral hygiene, or the environment we live in, or probably a lot of chemicals we are exposed to right now, given that we are too much obsessed with supermarket foods, packaged foods, and so-called uh, named healthy snacks, right? So there are multiple things. So again, nutrition choices has a role to play, and your microbiome function has a role to play.
So I think with this, we have come to the end of this discussion. Yeah, Sushant. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I would like you to end this discussion by a few insights on this particular topic. What is your suggestion to those people who think that their family members are already, in this Parkinson's trap? And what would you like to suggest them?
See, first thing is I would like to say that no one could, if you are thinking, it's as you mentioned, it's linked to your nutrition. If you are thinking I'm going to sign up for a nutritionist or a coach, or probably or some other nutrition company, right? nobody can tell you what you should eat, what you should not, because there are billions of biochemical, thousands and acts and billions of millions and billions of biochemical reactions happening inside the body, right? So it is important to understand, right? So even having a D sulfobrio or H. pylori, it doesn't mean that you would have Parkinson's. You really have to understand whether they are actually releasing certain chemicals or metabolites which is causing S2S which is producing S2S, which is actually impacting inflammation in the gut, which is causing elevation of alpha synuclein, right? So again, you have to understand the biochemical functions here, right? So it is not guesswork, it is very, very science. It is not even pseudoscience, it is a real science. You have to understand, right, how microbiome interacts with your body, how they interact with the food you eat, what kind of biochemical activities they do, what kind of signaling cascades happen inside the body also. So all these for everyone, we do not as of now we do not have biomarkers for Parkinson's, but we do tell you your S2S production, your bitrate production, your oral inflammatory pathways, your oral health, your gum health, your risk of gum disease, right? Which could be a relevant indicator, early indicator for Parkinson's, right?
So you can say these are like pre-disease signatures that we can decode right now.
You can, yeah. So these we can tell, but we cannot tell with surety. But these are so someone it is being called Parkinson's. So probably we are getting into that uh, research around neurodegenerative disorder, neurological disorders, which is our plan for this year, right? Getting into studying about cancer situations and neurological disorders. That's our program. That's the plan for this financial year in terms of our research and in terms of product development.
So thank you, Sushant, for such an insightful discussion, and it was very deep in terms of understanding of this neurological disorder. And we hope that our listeners are already benefiting from our talks. So thank you everyone for listening to us, and we are available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.